All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm on the internet as always because no one ever leaves their homes anymore, and I'm with a band that hasn't been on the show before, but I feel like you guys have been around for a while, and I know you have a lot of new things that have been going on recently that I want to talk to you about. But before we even start any of that, I think the best way to get this kicked off is if the two of you want to introduce yourselves and what it is that you do in the band, and then maybe just give a bit of background about what the band's all about.
Sure. So I'm Griffin. I play bass and I do a bunch of the production side of A Grizzly Fate.
Cool.
My name is James, and I am vocals in A Grizzly Fate.
And how many other people are you missing here? How big is the full band?
So right now we're only missing Avery.
Okay.
So there's 3 of us currently, and then that will probably grow to about 5 once COVID lets people jam again.
Right. Okay. So the 3 of you, I guess, are the core of the band, though. Like you're the permanent. Okay, cool. So, and I know you have a new album, and that just came out very recently, and I do want to talk about that. But first, I need to. This has come up once before on the show a couple of years ago, but the term "easycore." It was a new one on me when I first heard it, whenever it was that I was first introduced to the term, but it just sounds so fake to me. It sounds like something someone made up as a genre to be like, oh yeah, something core, and they just threw a random word in it. So I feel like I'm not alone in that, in just being baffled by this genre. So I mean, I've heard your stuff. I know what you sound like, but how do you define that? What the hell is easycore?
I would define it as if you had pop punk, but added breakdowns from hardcore into it.
Okay,
so really, it's as simple as that at the end of the day. Just happy, heavy, fun, goofy.
Okay, that's pretty clear. So I guess those are fairly disparate things, though. I mean, pop punk, and hardcore breakdowns. I mean, they're within the same umbrella genre of big tent punk rock, right? But there's definitely some drastic differences. I mean, pop punk has that kind of, like you said, happy sort of upbeat goofiness to it almost, and then hardcore is pretty much the opposite, sonically and emotionally and aesthetically. So what works about the two together? Like how do you make those mesh and not just seem jarring, I guess?
I think the best part about easycore is how, now obviously say easy it is for people to move to it. Like no matter what part of the song, someone can move along to it. If it's the more like pop punky stuff, you can jump around, sing, chant and stuff like that. Or when you hit the breakdowns, there's tons of moshing that can come from it. So really, no matter what taste you have, there's some part of a song that you can groove to and you can move along to. And I think, like, especially when I'm writing songs, I'm like, okay, this part I want people to be dancing to. I want people to be jumping around to this part.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier with easycore because you have such a broad range of stuff you can hit on.
Does that make it a little easier, not to use easy again, but a little simpler for your band to sort of move between genres because you have elements of pop punk and because you have elements of hardcore? Like when shows were happening, did you find it that you were able to kind of fit into different subgenres and different little aspects of the scene because you're kind of mutable that way?
Oh yeah, James, we played with all kinds of bands.
Oh yeah, we've played with everything from like guys doing emo trap stuff to some really hardcore bands, some just straight pop punk. I think we've even had like shows where someone's done like an acoustic opener before. Maybe that was a long time ago, but yeah, tons of stuff.
I will never forget. We played a show at the Windsor Hotel, and it was like we were on the more pop punky side of it, and then the band closing out the show was like super hardcore to the point where the dude was like punching himself in the face trying to make himself throw up on stage, and we're like, we're playing with this. Like, it was so wild.
That's cool. Would you remember what that band was called? I'm kind of curious now who was doing that.
Is that Underlier or Underlier?
It might have been Underlier. Yeah,
Okay.
I remember he was sticking his own fingers down his throat. We were like, is he gonna throw up on stage?
Yeah.
They were great though. Fucking awesome show.
They're wild.
Yeah. Cool. So that does sound like a fun show. Because I've been doing the show for like 8.5 years now, and I mean I have my own sort of background in the Winnipeg music scene. But I always try to sort of file everyone away in my brain as to sort of where they're coming from within Winnipeg's music community. So what were the bands that you guys sort of came up listening to? Like, were there certain artists that you went to a lot of shows of before you started your own bands, or who were your influences within Winnipeg?
For me, I know the first big band that I like, the band in Winnipeg that really I went to see multiple times over and over was Dreadnought.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I was 14 when I first saw Dreadnought show, and I saw them like 6 times after that. But like other bands, I don't know, like that was the big one. I saw Explicit around that time, and then that's when I started my first high school band, kind of being like, I want to start playing metalcore, playing heavy music. And it was really just all the bands I got to play with since then. I've kind of you take a little bit out of all the experiences you get along the way and kind of meld it into who you are as a musician.
Sure.
Yeah, and then I grew up loving Crisis Jane. Those guys, that album, that EP still slaps. And so like I started like playing in a band and doing shows when I was like 14. So it was early on that getting that experience of like seeing what other bands are doing, and as we say, steal from the best and learn from it and try to make it better.
For sure. So how long has A Grizzly Fate been in existence as a unit?
Under what we originally had another name, Underachiever, and that started. Our first show was in 2015 as Underachiever, but we kind of reinvented ourselves as Grizzly Fate in 2018, and we've been going strong kind of as a band since then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite a while. It's a pretty long time to exist as a band, especially in a city like Winnipeg, where it seems like everyone quits and starts new bands with each other as band members like every week. Not now, obviously, because of the pandemic, but there's a long history of this incestuousness within the Winnipeg music scene. So it's cool to see you guys have been around for as long as you have. And so this album that you put out, I was looking at some of your social media, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like maybe it was supposed to come out a few months earlier, and is now just got released at the end of April or the beginning of May. Is this a pandemic issue? Like, is this you kind of got derailed by COVID, or what happened?
This is 100% me. This is 100% this guy.
Yeah.
So this album is the first time I've ever been like, okay, I'm taking the reins. I'm doing the production on all of this. So I was in charge of the recording, and then I did the mixing and somewhat of mastering. And there was, I think, 6 different points in the past year where I'm like, okay, it's done. And then like I go away for a couple of days, and I'm like, it's not friggin' done, and start like keep going. So I was the one that was like, we can get this done in February. I'm pretty sure I can have this done in February. And then like a week before February came, I'm like, guys, I can't have this done for February. So then it was very much like, all right, whenever Griffin can do this, we're just gonna drop it.
Right.
Yeah.
What was it like dropping it in the middle of this? I mean, because February was still during the pandemic, obviously, but it was a little bit different. I mean, people were maybe more hopeful that things were gonna change. It was kind of right before that big spike, I think, or maybe it was during it. I don't know. It all blends together now. But I mean, what was this sort of feeling behind that? Because you can't play a show to release it, right? The way to promote it traditionally is kind of gone. So what was it? What was the experience like of just putting something out there in this bizarre, dystopian future we all live in?
It's definitely a little odd, because it feels like you're putting something you've been working on for so long kind of just out there, and there's no like party, there's no celebration show, which like is what you always would look forward to with something like this. But like on the other hand, I have seen a lot of people I think are like itching for new music, because a lot of bands put things off. They don't want to release something during the pandemic. And with so many old songs on this that this is our first major release, we have songs that we've been sitting on for 5 years, that it just feels like we need to have them out to all those people who like came out to a show, who've heard them, like they deserve to have that recorded with some decent quality to listen back to, So sure, I'm just glad to have it out.
Does it feel weird that some of these songs, I mean, by the time shows happen, right? Whether it's 3 months from now, 6 months from now, who knows when it's going to be, hopefully sooner rather than later. But do you feel like those songs are kind of now in the past? Now that you've officially recorded them and released them, can you sort of move on past them? Or are you still comfortable playing these 5-year-old songs, every show? Are you happy to keep doing it? Or do you feel the band has sort of progressed or changed over that time?
So I think James never wants us to play Fuck You Frank live ever again. Because he wrote that song literally 5 years ago, and 6 years ago. He even had like a Facebook memory pop up not too long ago, be like, this is the first time I played the riff. And so I think some stuff like that will be probably relegated to like one like every once in a while.
Yeah.
I think as a writing group, where like a lot of those songs were James and Avery writing on their own kind of thing,
Okay.
and then just bring it towards the band. Whereas I think going forward, a lot of the stuff is me, James, and Avery all working together. Like, oh, I have this idea, or for this song, we want to have like this kind of feeling, and bringing a lot of different influences that we didn't have for those first couple songs. So I think we're really excited for the stuff that's coming, like that we're working on now. And like we even look at the songs on the album, and you can listen and hear which ones are the ones that we wrote in like the past year or so, and which ones are the ones that were written a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And we're building for sure.
Well, that's just going to happen naturally too, right? You're playing together for that long. You're hopefully going to get better, and your songwriting's going to get tighter. And right, for sure, yeah. So what's what is the plan? I guess with this album now that it's out. Of course, the caveat being that no one knows what's happening with the pandemic. But what are you hoping to do with this? Are you hoping that a CD release show or whatever is something that could happen at some point, or are you just going to sort of now that it's out, move on to the next thing once you're able to all get together and then start playing again?
Haven't put a ton of thought into like the first show back there. Definitely, I'm not sure if we'd market it as a release show because it'll probably be so long afterwards. That being said, like we have physical copies, we might push them a little bit, and hopefully we're also writing currently. So even just having new music by the time a show comes around is probably a goal of ours. I'd be dropping new things at that point too.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It was so funny because last winter, like before COVID, I was doing all this work to get like backing tracks set up and synths and stuff, so that way when we played live, it'll be all ready to go. And then COVID hit, and it's like, okay, well, put a lot of work into that. Who knows when that'll come to light?
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that first show when we can have like a full soundscape on stage with us instead
finally
of just...
play to a click.
Yes.
Is that something you haven't done before, having that full soundscape?
Never. Like, it was interesting. Like, before we really sat down and were like, you know what, we're producing this thing. We can incorporate all these different sounds and stuff that we want to. We didn't really have any synth stuff. We had talked about it, but it was always kind of like, oh, that would be cool. And then just hanging out, working around my keyboard and stuff, we're like, well, let's just do it. Let's just write stuff and see how it sounds. And if we don't like it, chuck it. Like,
yeah.
And to have that added to the old songs also just kind of felt like a little thing to add into them to make them interesting again. Like there's certain parts that it really revitalized my interest in old songs that we have. Cool.
Well, because it fleshes them out a lot, right? I mean, you can add an extra dimension to it.
Yes,
absolutely.
So I noticed the album cover is by Nico Rudolph, which is super cool. I mean, if you're gonna get a bear drawn by somebody, I think that's the guy. I can't think of anyone better to draw a bear. How did you end up working with him?
I actually got Nico to do the first t-shirt for my original band way back when I was a high school student, and he was so cool about it. Such a nice guy. And
what band was that?
We were called Iconoclasm. We released one EP on Bandcamp, and that was it. One of those, one of those bands, the incestuous local scene, we all just dispersed. But he did a great job on that. And I remember always thinking how great his art was. I saw him working on comic books, When Big Bears Invade, for example.
Yeah.
And we were talking about doing a whole thing with like having a bear standing in a lake, and we weren't even necessarily going to have it be we weren't going to have it be drawn art. We were going to do a photo perhaps, but then once I thought of Nico, I was like, it's this perfect. He's the bear guy.
He is the bear guy. Yeah.
He knocked it out of the park. I absolutely loved it.
It's amazing.
It's really cool. Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of brings up another thing that I like to ask people about because I'm a nerd about it, but the fact that you've obviously put in time and effort into coming up with the packaging of the record, which, we're in this bizarre world where you don't really know what format people are going to listen into, whether they're going to be just Spotify or just on Bandcamp or they're actually buying the CD. How important is it to you guys to have kind of your work as a complete package? I mean, because I'm old, I listen to tapes, records, and CDs. I don't understand how Spotify works. I never will. And so, I've accepted that. I've just, my kids explain it to me. I don't get it. But But I mean, it's always nice to see when there's obviously effort put into it, because a lot of people will just take some photo and throw it up on Bandcamp and there's my cover, right? But you guys worked with a well-known local artist, and you've obviously put thought into it. So how important is that aspect of it, the visual side of things?
I'm a nerd for it. Like,
good to hear.
As much as like I totally listen to Spotify all the time, I like the idea of having a story even through the visuals. So like there's little nuances about the front and the back artwork that I think probably only me and James know. But like I geeked out on one day and I'm like, man, this would be so cool. There's like this hidden meaning to it and everything. And like James probably thought it was silly and stupid, but I love geeking out about that stuff.
Even if it's just for us, there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, do you have an idea of like sort of what most of your listeners are listening on? Like, is physical copies a valid thing for a band like you to be releasing? I mean, I'm glad to hear you are, because as someone who only listens to physical stuff, but do you have like a kind of a gauge on your fan base and whether they're actually interested in CDs? And I just out of curiosity, because it seems like depending on the genre and depending on the age of the fans and stuff, different bands have totally different experiences with this.
It really, my goal when I released CDs, because I was really the one that pushed for it, was just to break even and to have those out there in the wild. Because for part of it was for me, I wanted to have the first thing we released to have a physical copy, but also I feel like just people having a physical copy sitting around in their house, it's not something that can be taken away from them. It's just on their shelf forever, you know? And I feel like it kind of legitimizes a release more than like just something being dropped on Spotify and kind of a couple posts about it. Like,
definitely.
But that being said, are a lot of people going to just listen on Spotify? Sure. And like, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But for the people who want a CD, I just like that it's a possibility, and it's still a thing that some people are willing to pay for. I love that.
Yeah. There's a few of us out here. We're dwindling. Our numbers are dwindling, but we exist for sure.
Got to keep it alive.
Yeah. So what's I mean, I know we sort of touched on like what you're going to do as far as potentially releasing this with a show or not. Knowing you don't really know at this point, but what would be ideal for you? I mean, it's assuming the pandemic ended tomorrow and you were able to immediately jump back into rehearsing, playing shows, touring, whatever. What sort of would be the ideal situation for A Grizzly Fate to be in?
Oh man,
because it's coming at some point, right? At some point. My dream situation for this would be because we always talked about having like an EP release show at the park and everything, especially because now with the new renos, it'd be sick as hell. For sure.
So like it would be super cool if we could have a release show there, and there's so many bands that we're close with in the scene that we'd love to have open for us and support us and just be there. That to me, I think that would be super cool, and to have like the full soundscape and the click tracks and all like the techie stuff that we never really did before. I think that'd be cool as hell. Yeah,
it does sound cool. Well, where does the techie stuff come from? Because I mean, again, like this genre of music that you guys are telling me is real, easycore. It's got these elements from pop punk and from hardcore, neither of which are really known for their synth use or click tracks or computers or any of that. So where does that influence come from?
I'd say like one of the big albums that really brought it in was 4 Years Strong on Rise or Die Trying, which came out in 2006.
Okay.
It was really heavy pop punk with like, they had a synth player back on the first two albums, and that really kind of made the sound. It's funny, like Easycore, the name actually came from a tour with 4 Years Strong, Newfound Glory, and A Day to Remember.
Okay.
I guess they were just messing around and thought hardcore, like easycore, because it's not as heavy, and it's just like became a joke that everyone latched onto for so long.
It's become this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's so cool, because I think back, like there was years and years where metalcore bands and easycore bands would have like a dedicated synth player. Like,
right.
I always think back to like the Attack music video for Stickly. You just see
those the guys who did the weird dancing shit, like the weird yeah. You
see Caleb Shomo just playing synth and just crabcore, and it's it's so funny, but also so cool at the same time.
Right. Well, I think I mean, like that whole era of stuff, there's definitely like some cringiness to it. I think now, I don't know how well a lot of it has aged, but I think you guys are probably more of the age where you were right in it when it was happening, right? Like I'm almost 40. I missed most of that, other than seeing it and being like, "What the hell are these kids doing?" Right. So, how does that whole kind of era age to you? Like, are you still really into some of the stuff you were listening to at that time, or is it sort of like cringy?
I will forever be a scene kid.
Yeah.
even if I don't look it, and I wear dress clothes sometimes, I am still scene kid till death.
Yeah, like it's cringe, but you embrace it,
Totally, yeah. Well, I mean, I was in a ska band in the 90s, right when that was happening, and so like I know the feeling for sure. Like there's this weird people look at you strange when you say that. So, yeah.
I love ska.
Oh, me too. But yeah, it's one of those subculture things that happened, right? And it has a reputation that maybe leaves something to be desired.
Yeah, that is true.
If people want to hear your record, again, obviously there's no shows happening. Where can they get it? Where's the best way to find your music and listen to the new album?
Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, the whole thing's on there. Pretty much wherever you stream music.
And then physical copies, is that through Bandcamp, or what's the best way for that to be obtained?
Physical copies, it's really just DM either the band page or one of us, and we can, if you live in Winnipeg, we'll deliver it to you, or just mail it to you if you live somewhere else.
Yeah, we're now mailing. We mailed one off to UK the other day, which was wild.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We're doing shipping now. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the cool things about this era, is that like people from anywhere once it's out there, someone in some random country could hear it and be like, "Oh, I love this," right? And then you can get fans that never would have happened even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. You wouldn't have had this opportunity to just reach out to random strangers in other parts of the planet. Yeah.
The beauty of the internet.
Totally, yeah. So, the good thing about this being a podcast is, it'll come out in a few weeks from when we record it, but it'll be just sitting on the internet forever. So, if someone hears this a year from now, and maybe you guys are back playing shows or you have more going on, what's the best way to follow you to sort of find out what you're up to going forward?
Probably Instagram, which is James.
At A Grizzly Fate.
Pretty straightforward.
And then Facebook as well, because we still use that because we're dinosaurs.
I use it all the time too,
yeah. Which is also a Grizzly Fate, or is that a Grizzly Fate official?
If you search A Grizzly Fate, we're sure to come up. That's
right. I would hope so.
Right.
I would hope so.
So searching for A Grizzly Fate on social media is probably the best way to do it. Right on.
Yeah,
right on.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.